In this explainer, you're going to learn exactly how to evaluate investment projects using payback, ARR, NPV, IRR, taxation, inflation adjustments, and asset replacement decisions so you can confidently pass your CIMA P2 exam and make better investment decisions. Welcome. Think of this as your hero's journey. We are going to completely master Chapter 6 today, and by the end, you'll be leveling up from a novice to an absolute boss in investment appraisal. Let's get right into it.
Okay, so here is our roadmap. We're going to hit basic appraisal, time value, taxes and allowances, working capital and inflation, combine models, and wrap it all up with asset replacement.
First up, Section 1, Basic Appraisal. So, when companies first look at a capital project, they usually grab some quick introductory screening methods, like payback. Put simply, this just answers the burning question, how long is it going to take to get our money back? It's a fantastic initial liquidity check. Like, if a company is tight on cash, a project paying back in 2 years obviously looks way better than one taking 5. But a quick warning here. Payback completely ignores any cash flows that roll in after that payback period. And, maybe even worse, it totally ignores the time value of money. $1 tomorrow is treated exactly the same as $1 5 years from now. Crazy, right?
Our second basic tool is ARR, or the accounting rate of return. Now, CIMA has a preferred formula for this, which is average annual profits divided by average investment, multiplied by 100 to get a nice percentage. This gives you a really easy-to-compare relative measure. But here's the catch. It relies entirely on subjective accounting profits, numbers that include non-cash items like depreciation, rather than hard objective cash flows.
And speaking of ARR, let's talk about a massive exam trap. When you're calculating the denominator for ARR, do you use the opening investment or the average investment? Well, in a classic CIMA P2 scenario, dividing by the average investment gives you the correct answer, say 47.5%. But if you panic in the exam room and just grab the initial opening investment, your answer literally tanks down an incorrect 25.8%. Ouch. Always remember, opening investment plus scrap value divided by 2 gives you your average. Seriously, don't fall for that one.
Moving right along to Section 2, Time Value.
As we just talked about, traditional payback assumes all cash is totally equal, no matter when it actually hits the bank. But discounted payback? It fixes that. It discounts those future cash flows back to their present value before figuring out how long it takes to break even. And this perfectly illustrates how we can bridge the gap between a basic, quick and dirty liquidity check and the much more rigorous net present value, or NPV method. It's just a way safer, much more conservative metric to use.
Taking that concept one step further, we have the Discounted Payback Index, sometimes called the DPBI or Profitability Index. This is the present value of the net cash inflows divided by the initial cash outlay. So why do we actually care about this? Well, if capital is scarce, and let's be honest, it usually is, you really want to know exactly how many times a project recovers its initial funds. It's an absolutely brilliant way to rank competing projects when you just don't have the budget for the whole shebang.
All right, Section 3, taxes and allowances.
Okay, brace yourselves, because taxation is basically the ultimate villain here. It can single-handedly turn a highly profitable project into a complete loss maker. To fight back and avoid total confusion in the exam, you need a super rigid step-by-step method. Step 1. Calculate your writing down allowance, or WDA. That's your tax allowable depreciation. Step 2. Multiply that WDA by the corporate tax rate. That gives you your actual cash tax saving. Step 3. Split the timing of that cash flow according to whatever the tax rules are. And finally, Step 4. When you sell the asset at the end of its life, calculate the final balancing allowance or charge. Stick to those steps, and you'll be golden.
Let's look at a concrete numerical example to really make this stick. Say in year 1, we have a WDA of $25,000. At a 30% tax rate, our tax saving is $7,500. But pay close attention to the cash timing here. Under UK rules, large companies pay tax quarterly, which effectively means half the tax is paid in the year the profits are actually earned, and the other half is paid in the following year. So that $7,500 saving, it's split. $3,750 hits in year 1, and the remaining $3,750 gets pushed into year 2. Then, in year 2, you get the second half of year 1's saving, plus the first half of year 2's saving. It creates this whole cascading effect that you absolutely must model perfectly in your NPV tables.
Next up, Section 4, Working Capital and Inflation.
As if taxes weren't tricky enough, we now have to deal with invisible forces that totally warp our cash flows, starting with the temporary lockup of working capital. When you launch a new project, you almost always need to buy some initial inventory or hold receivables, right? That working capital is a strict cash outflow right at the start, but here is the absolutely critical part to remember. That money's not gone forever. At the very end of the project, you sell off the last of your inventory, you collect your final receivables, meaning you must remember to add the total working capital back as a cash inflow in the final year of your analysis. Seriously, forgetting to release working capital is one of the easiest ways to bleed marks on this exam.
Then we have inflation. You really need to internalize the difference between real cash flows, which completely ignore inflation, and nominal or money cash flows, which actually bake those inflation effects in. Often you'll find your costs might inflate at one specific rate, while your revenues inflate at a totally different general rate. To navigate this mess, we use the Fisher equation. 1 plus the money rate equals 1 plus the real rate multiplied by 1 plus the inflation rate. Think of this as your ultimate secret weapon for converting rates and ensuring you're actually comparing apples to apples.
Now we're entering Section 5, Combined Models.
All right, we have arrived at the final boss battle of this explainer, where we have to combine literally everything. The crucial takeaway here is a golden rule straight from the text. You absolutely must match your cash flows to your discount rate. If your cash flows do not include tax, use a pre-tax discount rate. Simple enough. But if you've done all the grueling work of calculating tax and capital allowances, meaning you now have after-tax cash flows, you must discount them using the after-tax cost of capital. Mixing these two up will completely invalidate your entire NPV calculation.
When you bring it all together, it forms this beautiful, holistic framework. The whole process starts with the origination and screening of a project, which then flows right into a super rigorous capital budget analysis. Think about how taxable profits, capital allowances, incremental working capital, which we release at the end, remember, and inflation, they all feed downwards into the model. All of these elements generate the relevant, future, incremental cash flows that we then appraise using our NPV and IRR tools to make our final, confident acceptance decision. It's just a highly structured, wonderfully repeatable process.
Almost there. Section 6, Asset Replacement. Time for the victory lap. Let's simulate a real-world scenario. Let's say the question isn't whether to buy an asset, but which one to buy. You've got two mutually exclusive options. Equipment X costs $80,000, makes a really solid profit early on, but then completely declines to just $10,000 by year 5. On the other hand, equipment Y costs almost double, $150,000, but it maintains a strong flat profit of $60,000 through those later years. If your company's target ARR is 30%, what's your move? Well, you'd calculate the average profit over the average investment for both options. Because Y sustains much higher profits, despite its hefty upfront cost, it actually might clear your hurdle rate, while X's late-stage drop-off could completely sink it.
Now, when you're prioritizing between these mutually exclusive projects, you're usually going to look at NPV and IRR. But here's the thing. They can sometimes give you totally conflicting advice. Why? Well, NPV gives you an absolute dollar value and safely assumes that cash flows are being reinvested at your standard cost of capital. IRR, however, gives you a percentage return, but it makes a pretty risky assumption. It assumes you can magically reinvest your interim cash flows at that exact same, usually high IRR rate. Because of this flaw, NPV is always the theoretically superior choice when making these tough replacement decisions. Okay, before we officially wrap up, let's quickly recap the absolute most dangerous pitfalls we've covered today, just so you are fully armed for test day. Trap number 1, using subjective accounting profits instead of incremental cash flows for your NPV. Don't do it. Trap number 2, forgetting to add back your working capital as a cash inflow at the end of the project's life. And trap number 3, using the opening investment instead of the average investment when calculating your ARR. Avoid these 3 traps and you are well on your way to acing this.
And that brings us to the very end of our journey today. Successful investment appraisal requires more than calculations. Management accountants must understand taxation, inflation, working capital, and strategic business consideration. So, how are you going to apply these new layers of insight to your next big project evaluation? Keep practicing those models, stay focused, and you are absolutely going to crush it.